The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
Those that have deportation orders are going to be taken back to their country of origin.
ICE arrests continue across the country, the unintended consequences that follow as the operations grow. Then much needed rain comes to the LA area. Why the so-called relief is also bringing potential disaster to Southern California. And tax season officially kicks off. Just how easy it's become for a growing number of Americans to file online for free. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. Tonight, the nationwide crackdown on those illegally in the country, as directed by President Donald Trump, happening in communities coast to coast, from LA to Miami, and scores of cities in between. An uptick in arrests, largely targeting migrants with criminal histories, with nearly 1,000 arrested just yesterday alone. The Washington Post reports that Immigration and Customs Enforcement is going after between 1,200 and 1,500 targets a day, and the scope of these operations is creating concern among Democrats.
There's no way that you can conduct this kind of chaotic mass deportation raid across the country using quotas where you're saying, hey, every day you've got to go out there and round up a certain number of bodies. There's no way you're going to be able to do that without infringing upon the rights of U.S. citizens and permanent residents who have a right to be here.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt responded to the Post, calling the report false. DHS officials told Fox News it's more of a goal than a quota. Still, local leaders warn of the negative impact ahead. Here's Christine Frizzell with the latest.
The door knocking is now happening in cities across this country, with 956 arrests and 554 detainers lodged on Sunday alone. Here in Chicago, it's led to multiple arrests of criminal migrants as the cameras are rolling. TV host Dr. Phil accompanying Border Czar Tom Homan on some of those missions.
You've been charged with sex crimes with children?
Not really.
Not really? And never been deported?
Nope.
Huh. Let's take them in, process and lock them up.
Most of those locked up following a long investigative process, often involving careful surveillance.
To see, how the community set up, how the house may be set up, what kind of exits and entrances, how many cars may be in front, if there are toys from children in front of the house.
Deportations will continue to be carried out with the help of the U.S. military, including reservists, National Guard, and active duty service members, as confirmed by the Pentagon's new chief.
The Defense Department will support the defense of the territorial integrity of the United States of America at the southern border.
ICE officials have now reportedly been directed to try to arrest between 12 and 1,500 people per day. And while Trump administration officials insist the focus is on criminal migrants, there have already been multiple cases of businesses being raided and undocumented workers taken out. That includes this Newark, New Jersey seafood market, where ICE agents reportedly went in and demanded workers in the back show their papers, arresting 3 undocumented employees, setting off fear around the community.
Their workers won't come, and what these folks don't understand is this is going to hurt our economy. Who do they think works behind in these stores, who are waiting these tables, who are cleaning up these places, who are working on the farms, providing the food to get to the restaurants?
A new reality in cities across this country. The immigration crackdown promised by Donald Trump now being implemented. I'm Christine Frizzell for the National News Desk.
And tonight, a ban on transgender individuals from military service soon to be inked by President Donald Trump. Trump issued a similar ban in his first term that was later undone by President Biden. But with Trump now reinstating that ban, we're expecting to see one of the largest layoffs of transgender people in history. Minnesota State Rep Lee Finke, who identifies as trans, responding to the move.
These are glorified press releases meant to scare people, meant to create uncertainty, meant to push people towards discrimination of transgender people, and will be very difficult to enforce.
The order is likely to face legal challenges. A 2024 congressional report estimated there were up to 10,000 personnel identifying as transgender between both active duty and reservists. The sweeping changes praised by By newly minted Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Today was his first day on the job. Hegseth arriving to the Pentagon earlier, where he reiterated his commitment to a more secure America.
We're in capable hands. The warfighters are ready to go. Our job is lethality and readiness and warfighting. We're going to hold people accountable. And I know the chairman agrees with that. The lawful orders of the President of the United States will be executed inside this Defense Department swiftly and without excuse.
The first rain in months, bringing some much needed relief from the raging wildfires in LA County. But along with the welcome precipitation is the fear of new dangers. A flood watch was in effect yesterday into today, with concerns that flash flooding and debris flows caused by excessive rainfall could bring a host of other safety and health issues like toxic runoff. Mudslides are another possibility. You can see that right here. This is a mudslide causing a road closure on the California State Highway. The main three blazes in LA County continue to burn tonight, but are each more than 90% contained. With recovery efforts underway in places like Southern California and North Carolina, which was ravaged by Hurricane Helene this past fall, President Trump is looking at ways to overhaul FEMA, the government's disaster and response agency. Over the weekend, Trump signing an order that establishes a review council to examine FEMA's performance that could result in dissolving the agency altogether. A 3.9 magnitude earthquake centered off the coast of Maine shook the Northeast today. It was felt as north as Portland, Maine, and as far south as Boston. Earthquakes are more rare on the East Coast, but not totally uncommon. A 4.8 magnitude earthquake shook Lebanon, New Jersey last April. North Dakota's ban on gender-changing care for minors heads to trial today. More than a year ago, families and doctors filed suit arguing the ban infringes upon the state's constitution. A gender equity attorney says all residents have a right to access health care to help improve their well-being. The trial is expected to last at least 8 days, and it's unclear when a judge will make a ruling. Well, this is new video that's emerged from Skycomish, Washington, of a rescue operation to save 3 skiers trapped on a mountain there. King County Air Support received an SOS alert via satellite from one of the skiers' Apple Watches. At least one of the skiers fell approximately 1,000 feet and suffered a serious leg injury. A second skier was also injured and unable to walk. The rescue team then airlifted all 3 to safety. By the numbers, the federal government issued nearly $170 billion in improper payments last year. National correspondent Janae Bowens has a closer look at this issue in tonight's Waste Watch report from Washington.
Billions blown on improper payments. The Government Accountability Office's latest report shows the federal government issued $161.5 billion in payments in fiscal year 2024 that should not have been made or that were made at an incorrect amount.
I put the fault at Congress here. It's not really cracking down and doing what it needs to do to reduce these erroneous and fraudulent payments.
Cato Institute's Chris Edwards says the large size of the government has made it impossible to keep up with.
The federal government actually runs more than 2,400 different subsidy and benefit programs. All of those programs have various degrees of error and fraud. I mean, Medicaid, for example, is a $600 billion program. It's got a fraud rate of over 10%.
It's a long-standing and significant issue. Since 2003, these improper payments have piled up to a total of $2.8 trillion. However, experts think it could be more, since some federal agencies are not complying with guidelines mandated in the Payment Integrity Information Act of 2019.
Sensible spending, basic stuff. And we're going to take Doge to Mars.
Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency are supposed to be making a plan that will eliminate fraud and improper payments within 6 months. But Edwards says it's going to take more than that.
A lot of members of Congress don't want to crack down on this waste because they want to make benefits easy for recipients to get. And the easier you make the benefits to get, the less paperwork there is, and it's easier for cheaters to come in and take advantage.
And Amira, with the national debt over $36 trillion and rising, experts warn the federal government can no longer afford to make these erroneous and fraudulent payments.
And Janae, I understand there are now calls for more transparency from the agencies that are not quite complying with the guidelines to manage improper payments. So which agencies are missing the mark here?
Yeah, so in the fiscal year 2022, 10 federal agencies were non-compliant, including the Departments of Defense, Ag, Treasury, Labor, and Homeland Security. And this is all according to the Government Accountability Office. Amira?
All right, Janae reporting out of Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for that report. It is International Holocaust Remembrance Day, marking 80 years since the Auschwitz death camp was liberated. Around the world, countries are holding ceremonies, but in Poland, a commemoration at Auschwitz, the former concentration camp, to remember the horrors and for those who didn't make it out. It is estimated more than 1 million people were killed there during World War II, the majority of whom were Jews. 12 million people, including 6 million Jews, were killed in the Holocaust across all of the camps, and just slightly more than 200,000 survivors remain alive 80 years later. And coming up, winter weather alerts, storm warnings impacting both the north and south this week, where the snow and heavy snow are expected in the coming days. But for those dreaming of spring, some travel deals are taking shape, where consumers will find the best value in the coming weeks. And later, an Army doctor receives his sentence for abuse of American soldiers. What victims have to say about the harrowing ordeal. We are tracking the next significant winter storm set to impact millions, bringing whiteout conditions, frigid temperatures, and severe storms from the Midwest to the Northeast. Tonight, from Ohio to Maine, the next Arctic blast will bring heavy snow, dropping temperatures lasting until at least Wednesday of this week. And looking ahead to the middle of the week, the storms currently over California and Arizona could bring feet of snow to some parts of the Southwest, and torrential rain also expected across Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, down to the Gulf Coast, and possibly Florida's Panhandle, hitting the southeast region that just experienced a historic blizzard last week. Mysterious drone sightings have increased again in the Northeast. You may remember in November and December all the talk, but they had largely subsided after the FAA placed restrictions last month that ended on January 19th. In the past week, residents from Virginia to Connecticut have reported at least 49 new sightings. Last week, from the Oval Office, President Trump said he wants to find out what it is and share that with the people. Today is the official beginning of tax season. You can now start to file your 2024 taxes with the IRS, due, of course, on April 15th. The IRS is also expanding their direct free filing system this year, now available in these 25 states here. If you've lived or worked in any of them, you can use direct file only in 12 states offered the service last year. And if you do end up with a little extra cash this year, maybe from a tax refund, taking a spring break trip might be on your mind. The good news, prices are working in the interests of consumers this year, according to a travel expert.
I think prices overall are slightly lower. We've seen some price erosion for international travel and domestic travel, places like Las Vegas and Florida that have been super expensive. I will say that you can find a lot of deals to Europe right now. The one place that's really expensive is Asia. So you want to set those Google flight alerts now and monitor prices.
And tonight, as that fragile Gaza truce deal continues to be on shaky ground, Israel says they've been told by Hamas that only 18 of the remaining 26 hostages to be released in phase 1 of the ceasefire deal are alive. Among those alive is Arbel Yehoud, who Israel wanted freed this past weekend. She is now expected to be included in the next round, along with 2 others on Thursday. Hamas says 3 more hostages will be released on Saturday as well. Also today, Israel lifted their blockade of North Gaza, allowing tens of thousands of displaced residents to return to what is left of their homes. Israel had ordered evacuations of the north beginning 15 months ago, shortly after the war began, and tonight, much of the area is reduced to rubble. The UN estimates that 69% of the structures in Gaza have been damaged or destroyed, including over 245,000 homes. And tonight, a possible cause revealed in last month's Jeju air crash in South Korea. A preliminary report confirms bird strikes in the airplane's engines. Investigators say the pilot received a warning of possible bird strikes and issued a distress signal before it crashed. The report also revealed the plane's black box stopped recording about 4 minutes before that crash. 179 people were killed on board. 2 crew members survived. More than 80,000 Kia Niro vehicles are now being recalled due to an airbag and seatbelt defect. The recall covers the electric plug-in hybrids and the hybrid crossover versions of the vehicle manufactured between August of 2022 and December of 2024. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration says that wiring could become damaged and prevent the airbags and seatbelts from operating properly. So far, no crashes or injuries have been reported in connection to the recall. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we begin in Florida, where a man is behind bars after police say he made threats against President Trump.
Caught, cuffed, and booked into the Palm Beach County Jail. 46-year-old Shannon Deperaro Atkins has been arrested for making what officials are calling violent threats against President Donald Trump. Officials say they received a tip about the posts, which were made on social media. One post shared on January 14th showed former presidents Abraham Lincoln, John F. Kennedy, Ronald Reagan, and civil rights activist Martin Luther King Jr. alongside Donald Trump with the words, "All stood up to Democrats, all were shot." Atkins sharing the post, saying, unfortunately, one is still alive.
While being interviewed later, he admitted writing the Facebook post that said he was joking. Folks, this is not a joke. Nothing of that sort is a joke.
Atkins is facing second-degree felony charges. The Secret Service will determine if federal charges will come too.
Border Patrol agent David Mayland was shot and killed during a gun battle.
I want to extend my heartfelt condolences to Agent Mayland's family, friends, and colleagues.
The FBI said they arrested Teresa Youngblood in connection to the case, who was driving a blue 2015 Toyota Prius with North Carolina plates, registered to German national Felix Bockholt, who was in the passenger seat at the time of the shooting. The pair was stopped for an immigration inspection. Investigators say the traffic stop escalated into a shooting after Youngblood allegedly fired a handgun toward at least one of the agents without warning, and Bockholt did the same. He was also killed.
Chris was a man of service. He spent his entire life protecting our country and doing everything he could to make America safe and keep the people here safe.
No metal detector at Antioch High School. A weapons detection system that failed. There is a new state bill that would allow law enforcement in 47 different Tennessee counties to acquire 3 state-of-the-art metal detectors with state-of-the-art weapons detection systems, all portable.
We're not saying that every school has to have a metal detector. What we're trying to do with this bill is to say that every school should at least have access to it.
The 3 metal detectors per county will only be offered to the poorest Tennessee counties, but if it's a success, it could be expanded to reach all students everywhere.
This is a no-brainer idea because we don't have all of these kinds of issues at places where they have metal detectors.
Up next, accountability for a former United States Army doctor convicted of assaulting soldiers. Why the victims didn't even know their experiences were part of a crime. It's one of the largest chronicled cases of sexual misconduct in military history. A trusted Army doctor sentenced to more than 13 years in prison after pleading guilty to sexually abusing dozens of his patients here at Joint Base Lewis McChord. Chris Daniels has a look at why the story is far from over.
My first actual appointment for care was with Michael Stockin.
This service member, who wanted to be anonymous, was seeking help for pain here at Joint Base Lewis McChord in 2022.
When do you know during the course of this appointment that something is off?
As soon as he asked me to, or directed me to drop my pants.
Because you're looking for relief from back pain.
Correct.
The 15-year veteran served throughout the U.S. and overseas and questioned what happened that day for nearly a year until he started to realize that he had been abused.
When you hear that there could be multiple people involved, what crossed your mind?
I was angry, but there's also some affirmation that no, it wasn't just me who got taken advantage of.
This is taking a toll.
My work performance has declined, and my interaction with my family has declined.
Stockin admitted to the crimes and pled guilty to 41 counts, ending with a dismissal from the Army and the maximum sentence, 164 months in prison, 4 months for each named victim.
We're talking about people who have devoted their lives for our country, and our Army let them down.
Attorney Ryan Giles represents 7 men who were assaulted by Dr. Stockin, but believes many others are out there and have remained silent.
Reporting sexual assault across the board, very difficult. Few victims are able to have the ability to come forward and to report. But for men, we know those numbers are even lower.
A recent survey estimated that 14,000 active duty men experienced unwanted sexual contact or sexual assault in 2023. Nearly 90% chose not to report their experience. Giles is raising concern about how the military identified victims in the Stockin case and says it failed to ensure they were given critical resources.
1 out of the 41 victims had a victim advocate. That's unacceptable. Half of the victims in this case didn't have a counsel, even though they have a right to one.
The criminal case against Stockin ends here, but there is a growing civil complaint seeking to hold the Army itself accountable, alleging it was negligent in hiring and supervising Dr. Stockin. More than 24 alleged victims are involved in that lawsuit.
And you went to the pain clinic?
Yes.
For this man, who has a 20-year military career as a senior enlisted soldier with multiple wartime deployments, there was solace in hearing from others who had been abused.
I would say that the only positive that came out of this for me was hearing the other victims and knowing that tragically there's some type of shared hardship in all of us out there.
Where do you go from here after going through this and the plea and the sentencing?
I go back to repairing my family and working on myself.
For Spotlight on America, I'm Chris Daniels.
Michael Stockin's attorney told Spotlight on America he takes full responsibility for his actions and makes no excuses. We'll continue to follow the civil case as it moves along, and we'll be right back. We know who will face off at the Super Bowl, so now it's on to the planning for those fun-filled watch parties, and you might be wondering what to expect for costs. The good news is you can budget about the same as last year for store-bought food and drinks. According to Wells Fargo report, if you're feeding 10 people, a spread of chicken wings, guacamole, chips, and beer, it'll cost you about $139, and that's just 10 cents more than where we were last year. The cost of beer and some food items have gone up, but the cost of other items have gone down. So really, it all balances out perfectly. And that does it for this edition of the National News Desk. I'm Amira David. Thank you so much for watching.